Locked pain, now we free from them chains. Heavy hearts, but we're moving through the rain. Three black brothers with the weight on their minds. Till we rise, till we shine, still we grind. From the darkness to the light we claim. Still humble in the struggle, still proud of our name.
All right, we got season 2, episode 13 today, and I have a very special guest with us today. His name is Calvin. We're going to talk about some of the stigmas that maybe have weighed us down in our past and how we can kind of overcome some of those stigmas. So go ahead and introduce yourself, Calvin, what you do and where you're from, and then we'll get right into that conversation. And thanks again, brother, for coming.
Well, first I want to say thank you for having me today. My name is Calvin Ockletree. I'm originally from Indianapolis, Indiana, by way of Tennessee, but now I currently reside in Orlando, Florida. What I finally found my passion to be is to be an author and to work within mental health. So not only am I a mental health advocate, I started my own company. My wife and I started our own company called Life is Butter LLC. And basically we are empowering mental health through expression. So through there, you'll be able to have access to my books, my events, and I actually go to different pop-ups and go to do different speaking engagements as well, whether it's at the work environment, whether it's at a high school or a college, or if it's at one of my own showcases where I throw Men Matter Mondays. And then I also do like relationship goals meetings that allow both sexes to come together, and we discuss the realm of how mental health is important within relationships.
Mm-hmm. So before we get into the topic, I want to just kind of ask you some other questions here. So before we get into like, how are you taking care of your mental health, in this tough economy that's going on in the world right now?
So for me, I always journaled, and then my journaling turned into poetry and writing in general, whether it's short stories. It's a lot of times anything that I'm going through and struggling with, I'll journal about it and then turn it into a poem. Poetry to me is my life in motion, not to sound cliche, but it drives me every day. If I'm driving down the road and I see something and I'm inspired by it, or if I'm going through something at the time, I'm the type to turn off the music in the car and start playing with what I'm experiencing at that moment and formulating into a stanza and then applying, poetry within that. So every day I write something, whether it's mental in my notes on my iPhone or actually on my computer or on a book.
Book. And I think that's wonderful to kind of put maybe your pain or your thoughts down into a form of poetry, because we have to learn how to we have to learn how to regulate our emotions better, instead of always being angry at the world, or just being able to just take our angers out on other people. So right. It's very cathartic to write something down.
Yes.
And know that you can feel a little bit better afterwards. And I wrote over 200 some poems when I was in the pandemic. So I was just like writing it down, just getting all my thoughts down, because I didn't have an outlet to really talk about some of the things that I was going through during that time, and it made it even worse. Yeah, so I can relate to you on that aspect. So now we can get right into the conversation of just overall stigmas that maybe you see, and then maybe we can come up with a solution for it. Because I'm always about coming up with a solution to a problem.
Solutions are important.
Yeah.
They are. So growing up in a socioeconomic challenging community, as people would say, either a project or a ghetto, first things first is none of the men were talking about mental health when I was growing up. It was taboo. Or when something happened at school and the guidance counselor would say, hey, well, maybe CJ needs to see a therapist. None of the men, or even my mom or anybody was like, nah, he's good, he doesn't need therapy. And I think a big stigma in the Black community was that they pull yourself up by the bootstraps and keep pushing. We don't got time, we don't have the funds, the finances to put you into therapy. And a stigma that is that you needed a whole lot of money when there were plenty of state resources that were provided to help a child that if he needed to go into therapy or anyone at that. So the financial the financial aspect of it could be a stigma, like, oh man, well, we don't got the money to pay for it. The Black man that I normally was around, they laughed at therapy and said it wasn't needed. Oh, it's a joke, or you're too weak. So that's another stigma, that you're weak if you need therapy and you need assistance to go see a shrink.
I actually think you're not weak when you open up and you're being vulnerable. Like
100%.
that's why a lot of men are killing themselves, because they feel like they have to hold it all in, and they have to, you know, conform to this societal expectation that just because I'm a man, I'm strong and I can handle everything. But that's what makes you worse off in life. Like, I want to be able to have guy friends that I can go to in times of need. And I constantly see is like a lot of people hold a lot of things in, even with my current friends. Like, it's sometimes they just go months without talking. And I'm like, we got to do better, man. We got to do better and open up into how we're feeling. Like, why is there so much shame in being vulnerable that you almost to the point of on the break of killing yourself, or you going through all of these emotions by yourself and you don't want to talk to nobody about it? But I get it. It's just the societal pressures that makes us feel like we have to do this. But now that it's a new era in 2025, we can open up and we can be, we don't have to be so secluded and isolated and stoic. You know what I mean?
Right.
We can say these things that's on our mind without judgmental. But there are men that's still out there that think, no, you're a man, you can't cry on camera, you can't do all of this. There are still those parts of the men, and that's why I would never be friends with those type of people, because I'm in a different mindset now. I used to be that way, and I used to have a lot of toxic friends and think manly, said a lot of vulgar words and stuff like that when I was in my 20s. But now that I'm older, in my 30s now, I see things differently, and I can relate to somebody that's going through the issues or whatever they're going through as a Black man in America.
100%.
But there's got to be a solution to this, and I think the solution is to just keep having these podcasts and keep opening up and talking about the things that we need to talk about. But everybody doesn't understand the assignment. They really don't.
They don't.
They do
not.
You can preach this all day long. You can talk about it. You can have these podcasts, but there are going to be still some pushback. And it's like, especially from the older generation, like they think we're so weak by just talking about these things. Like, at somewhere along the line, we have to break the generational cycle and teach our kids differently.
Yes.
So speak on that a little bit too.
And so, like, you said something that like was so strong. You said basically it's different generations, and the older generation, we see that it's a lot of lockdown, that toxicity of the sense of it's not masculine if I speak about what I'm dealing with within, right? That like, and that fallacy is such a dangerous one, because now that we are, like you said, it's a new age, and that we are in our 30s, and now there's a group of men that are saying, hey, we're tired of holding it in. We don't want to respond in a negative manner. I believe that the older generation, they had trauma. They had a lot of trauma, and they weren't taught how to handle that trauma. So the only thing, they were just doing what they were taught. But it's time for us to break that curse. And nowhere is it written that it said that trying to break such a huge generational curse within our culture, that it's going to be easy. There will be pushback, like you said. So like you said, solutions, the podcast, that's your platform, and you have cultivated it to where you are able to reach out to the masses and bring them in. The videos are able to be viewed. right? So you're leaving breadcrumbs. This is how you do it. This is how we get there. You know what I mean? My solution is to continue writing. You know, something that, you know, they always say, if you don't want Black people to know something, put it in a book. And I always wanted to break that stigma. You know what I mean? I always wanted to break that stigma, like, oh, well, I'm gonna write the book. So
Yeah, I'm currently I wrote a memoir about 3 years ago, but I haven't released it yet just because it's still some parts that I'm just a little bit iffy about releasing, just because it was a lot of childhood trauma that I went through when I was younger, and I exposed a lot of people, that I don't think is going to be very happy when it comes out.
but that's your story though. That's your, and
I know, but I still feel guilty. Like,
oh
should I
man,
have written all what I wrote?
yes
It's
you have. Yes, you have. Hey brother, you got the right one today, because share your story. That's your story. And if they didn't want to be a part of it,
I changed the name just because of legal purposes too.
right.
I didn't want to get
That's
sued or anything.
right, legality part. I get that, but you know, whoever reads that book and they know you personally, they'll know. You know what I mean? And but okay, I'll give like some friendly advice, right? Some brotherly advice. When I wrote my books, I had anxiety about releasing them as well, because it exposed me on a different level. It literally broke me down to, I felt like I was like rock bottom if I was to release the book. You know what I mean? Like, oh my gosh, I am exposed. I'm gonna seem weak. Every book I released, I feel like after it was out and people read them, or I finally published it, I started feeling certain amount of weight lift off my shoulders. And I feel like that's the same thing that we experience in mental health, when we finally are able to process and talk with someone and put goals in our life to accomplish, to help with our anxiety, to help with our stress, to help with our depression. It lifts it off your shoulders. And I don't want to put this on you, but I know how it feels, where I feel like I'm walking around with a shadow over me, because I feel weighted down from childhood traumas, things I didn't even do to myself. It was done to me. And I feel, and I shared that feeling when you said guilt, where it's like, oh, well, if I do this, am I just like them if I was to tell my story? When no, brother, we are not like them. We are just sharing our pain and releasing it in a format that we found comfort in while going through the darkness. And getting to that point of not feeling guilty anymore, that takes time, but allow yourself some grace. And as you approach this, bro, because you deserve to be lifted into become weightless with your story and who you are becoming. And it's going to be very essential to your growth as you continue growing. And I encourage you strongly to be a part of the solution to your
Not the
pain,
problem.
and not the problem.
Yeah.
You know
And
what I
I
mean?
received that, brother. I do appreciate that.
The-
And speaking of just generational trauma, it's like, I think if somewhere along the line, our father's father would have had their conversations with their boys and say, I'm going to do something different in my generation than my previous generation did. If they would have had those conversations, I think it wouldn't be a lot of men still still thinking on the boy mentality.
Reality, 100%.
It wouldn't be that way. It wouldn't be a lot of broken households. It would be more of a more collective household that's going to be embracing everything and come and talk to your parents about anything that's going on with your life. I'm afraid of my father. I never had those conversations that I need to have with him, because he just wasn't that personable. He wasn't friendly. He's evil. Put it point blank. He's very evil and sadistic. He doesn't care about anybody else but himself. And when you see that, it took me a long time to develop friends around black friends because I had those insecurities like, are they all the same? If my father wasn't no good, then my friendships, should I make black friends because they're toxic and they could be evil? So it
Right.
took me some years to really unpack that and go through all of that. But to say that, but that's just not true.
Right.
It's really good. I have made a lot of good black friends from even this show. Like the guests that come on, we kick it all the time and we talk and all that.
Right.
So it's this, you really have to kind of unlearn a lot of things that you perceive as a child that you thought was wrong, but you couldn't do anything about it. Like you had to kind of learn and develop and grow on your own. And it's still men out here, they're still acting childish, and I don't. And I think that if they would have got the help earlier in their life, they wouldn't be creating so many broken homes, or they wouldn't end up out of jail. Black men, statistically speaking, like, we go to jail the most. We don't make it out. Some of us don't make it out of the hood. So I'm very blessed to have made it out of the hood and never going back in the hood.
There's no need for you to go back.
Never going back to that horrible place. And it's not a disc. It's a lot of people. I had to cut a lot of people out of my life to feel more better because they wasn't. You can't take everybody to your elevation. You know what I mean? Because they will destroy you literally because of the success you have. There's a lot of envious and jealous people. I had to work through a lot on myself and years of therapy to kind of know who I am and cut off a lot of people. People don't like it when you elevate. They really don't.
Oh no, they want
And
to keep you in that same box.
and they want to keep you. They want to keep the continuous societal stigmas going on. Like, don't cry, don't do this, don't do that. There's so many rules that they told us, but why do you think there even became a stigma of like men shouldn't cry and all that? Who came up with this? That's what I'm
Well,
trying to figure out. Who
right.
said that we couldn't do these things? Who said that it's not okay to show your brother love and all that? Who said all these things? Like, I'm just trying to get an idea of where that came from.
So it's I'm loving this conversation and where it's going because we're hitting on like so many important
Mhm.
things. And again, to respect you on your platform, I don't know if you're religious or
Yeah,
spiritual,
I'm really interested. You can go ahead and say it.
but I'm going to give you an example. So I want to know who created these stigmas too, about being vulnerable, crying, being meek, showing brotherly love. Because if we go to church and are supposed to be in the likeness of Jesus Christ Himself, how is it that you don't understand why those things are important? Because He cried. He was long suffering. He was showing brotherly love. He cared for men. His discipleship. Like he brought people together, and he was still masculine at the same time. I mean, he was a carpenter. So using your hands and working, he wasn't afraid of getting his hands dirty. But at the same time, he was soft. He was genuine. He was a teacher. He was an educator. Like, so where do we miss that translation? You go to church, people go to church Saturday, Sunday, whatever day they choose to go to church. And how do you miss that message that that's the man that we are supposed to be, in his likeness, and so we were speaking about solutions, and I'm the type that when I set a goal and when I start a mission, I have to complete it. So, or complete it to the best of my ability. So I'm never going to stop writing to where I could put these into high school kids' hands, college, adults. I'm never going to stop doing these uh, Men Matter Mondays and these events surrounded around mental health, getting brothers together. Let's go bowling, let's go shoot pool. There's a guy we met in the group that I met you, named D Rucker, and he came with some guys from Tampa. We had some guys from Orlando, and when we went bowling, I gotta work with what I have around me. I gotta use my resources, the brotherhood that we make here. I'm going to now tell people like, hey, I met a good brother. He has a podcast. He talks about mental health. if you're comfortable, I'm going to share your message, and then I'm going to say, hey, let's network and connect. So I'm gonna keep passing and footing the bill, pay it forward, and I'm gonna continue to love on my brothers. You know what I mean? And then I was that kid in college and high school where they was like, man, Calvin's always, you know, he's soft because like he's always telling us he loves us, and I was pouring my heart out to people that didn't deserve it. To be honest, I was, but I was trying
That part that didn't deserve it.
they didn't deserve it, and
Mhm.
I got hurt.
And I think a lot of times we expect others to show up like we show up for them.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, and
Oh, I
that's just
did,
not
and
the way the world works.
and
You
I
know,
was stupid. I was stupid for believing that it was going to show up for me the same way, my brother. I was. And I got hurt very, very bad. You know, it pushed me to drugs. It pushed me to alcohol. You know, I felt abandoned. Bro, I got down to almost a 115, 20 pounds. Like, you know, I was, woo, and I was just still trying to pour in everybody else. But then I learned a key lesson that everybody doesn't deserve a seat at your table, and if they do, make sure they build their own chair. So,
that's true.
that's my solution to breaking these stigmas around mental health.
And I think that